How do I run a Spring Boot executable jar in a production environment? Introduction. Spring Boot is designed to create standalone, production-grade applications that can run directly with Java-jar. It also provides externalized configuration and production-ready features, such as health checks and metrics, which are especially useful in production. Running a Spring Boot executable jar in production is not just about starting the file. A proper production setup usually includes the correct build artifact, external configuration, the right active profile, logging, monitoring, a process manager or service wrapper, JVM options suitable for the environment. Understanding this helps you deploy your application more safely, consistently, and reliably. What does run a Spring Boot executable jar in production mean? It means packaging your application as a self-contained executable jar and starting it in a server environment with production configuration and operational controls. Spring Boot documents executable jars as self-contained archives that include your compiled classes plus all needed dependencies. In simple terms, build jar means provide production config, means run with Java-jar, means manage it like a server process. Example concept. Build app means deploy jar, means inject prod config, means start process, means monitor app. Why this is important. A command that works on a laptop is not automatically a good production deployment. In production, you usually need stable configuration, controlled logging, health visibility, and a reliable way to keep the process running. Spring Boot's production-ready features and externalized configuration are intended for exactly this kind of deployment. Example concept. Local run means good for development. Production run means needs config, monitoring, logs, restart strategy. Step 1. Build an executable jar. Spring Boot supports creating a self-contained executable jar, often called a fat jar or uber jar. Maven MVN clean package, Gradle.wr, Gradle W boot jar. After build, you typically get something like target myapp.jar. Example concept. Source code means build tool, means executable jar produced. Step 2. Run it with Java-jar. The standard way to start a Spring Boot executable jar is Java-jar myapp.jar. Spring Boot explicitly supports starting applications this way. Example concept. Jar file means JVM starts, means Spring Boot launches embedded server. Step 3. Activate the production profile. In production, you usually do not want development settings. Spring Boot profiles let you separate dev, test, and prod configuration. Externalized configuration and command line arguments can be used to activate the right profile. Example Java-jar myapp.jar spring.profiles.active equals prod. Example concept. Prod profile active means production-specific properties loaded. Step 4. Keep production configuration outside the jar. Spring Boot recommends externalized configuration, so you can run the same application code in different environments. It supports properties files, YAML files, environment variables, and command line arguments. Example with external config file, java myapp.jar spring config additional location, file opt myapp.config. Example with environment variable, export spring profiles active equals prod, export db password equals super secret, java myapp.jar. Example concept. Same jar means different environment, means different external config. This is one of the most important production practices because it keeps secrets and environment-specific settings out of the artifact itself. Step 5. Use environment variables for secrets. Spring Boot supports external configuration from environment variables, which makes them a strong choice for passwords, tokens, and API keys. Example export Spring data source URL equals JDBC PostgreSQL DB server 5432 appdb. Export Spring data source username app user. Export Spring data source password super secret java-jar myapp.jar spring profiles active prod. Example concept. Secret stored outside code means injected at runtime. Step 6. Configure logging for production. Spring Boot provides default logging configuration and supports console output with optional file output. For production, many teams either send logs to stdout/stdr for container platforms, or write logs to a managed file location and ship them elsewhere. Example logging.file.name/var log myapp/application.log. Example concept. Application runs means logs written consistently means operators can inspect them. Step 7. Add production monitoring with Actuator. Spring Boot Actuator adds production-ready features such as health, metrics, and management endpoints. Dependency. Group ID. org.springframework.boot. Group ID. Artifact ID. Spring Boot Starter Actuator. Artifact ID. Dependency. Example configuration. Management.endpoints.web.exposure include health, info, metrics. Management.endpoint.health.showDetails equals when authorized. Example concept. App running means health endpoint available, means platform can check app status. This is one of the most common production additions for Spring Boot services. Step 8. Run it as a managed service. In production, you usually should not start the jar in a random terminal window. Instead, run it under a process manager or service manager so it can restart automatically and start on boot. A common Linux approach is systemd. Example. Unit description. My Spring Boot app. After, network target. Service. User Spring. Working directory equals opt my app. Exec start equals user bin java. Jar opt my app myapp.jar. Minus spring.profiles.active equals prod. Success exit status equals 143. Restart always. Restart sec 5. Install. Wanted by multi-user.target. Example concept. OS Service Manager means starts app means restarts app as it stops. This is a deployment best practice rather than a Spring Boot requirement, but it is the normal production pattern. Step 9. Set JVM options for production. Because a Spring Boot executable jar is just a Java process, you can pass normal JVM options before -jar. Example, java-xms 512m, -xmx 124m, -jar myapp.jar, -spring.profiles.active equals prod. Example concept. JVM tuned means application gets controlled memory limits. The exact memory settings depend on your server, traffic, and workload. Step 10. Use the correct port and reverse proxy if needed. Spring Boot web apps usually run with an embedded server. You can override the port using configuration or command line arguments. Spring Boot supports command line switches as a configuration source. Example, java myapp.jar -server.port equals 8081. Example concept. Embedded server starts on chosen port, means reverse proxy can route traffic to it. In production, it is common to place Nginx, Apache, or a cloud load balancer in front of the app. Step 11. Typical production command. A realistic production startup command often looks like this. Java xms 512m, xmx 1024m, jar opt myapp jar, hash spring profiles active prod, hash spring config additional location, file opt myapp config. Example concept. JVM options plus prod profile plus external config equals production startup example folder structure. A simple production layout might be opt myapp, myapp jar, config jar application prod.yml. Example concept. Artifact separated from config and logs. This keeps deployment cleaner and easier to operate. Real-world example with external YAML. External file Spring data source. URL JDBC PostgreSQL. DB host 5432/proddb. Username app user password DB password. Server. Port 8080. Run command export. DB password. Super secret. Java-jar opt myapp.dar. Line spring.profiles.active equals prod. Line spring.config.additional location. File opt myapp config. Spring Boot supports both external configuration files and environment variables for this kind of setup. Example concept: external YAML plus environment secret plus production profile equals cleaner production deployment. Common mistakes. 1. Putting production secrets inside the jar. Spring Boot supports external configuration, specifically so you do not have to bake environment-specific secrets into the artifact. 2. Running without a production profile. This can accidentally load development settings. 3. Starting it manually in a terminal and leaving it there. If the shell closes, the app may stop. 4. No health or monitoring endpoints. That makes operations and troubleshooting much harder. Spring Boot Actuator exists for this use case. 5. No log strategy. Spring Boot supports file logging and console logging, but you should decide how production logs will be collected. Best practices. Best practices include: build a single executable jar and promote the same artifact across environments. Use spring.profiles.active equals prod or spring profiles active equals prod. Keep configuration external to the jar. Inject secrets using environment variables or another secret source. Enable Actuator health and metrics for production monitoring. App under systemd, a container orchestrator, or another process manager, configure logging intentionally. Pass JVM memory options appropriate for the server. Example concept: same artifact plus external config plus managed process equals solid production deployment advantages. Advantages include: simple deployment model, no separate servlet container required, easy profile-based configuration, strong monitoring support through Actuator, easy configuration overrides through environment variables and command line arguments. Challenges include: managing secrets securely, choosing the right JVM sizing, deciding log collection strategy, setting up restart and boot time startup, exposing only safe management endpoints. Concepts learned. By learning this topic, you understand what a Spring Boot executable jar is, how to start it with Java-jar, how to activate the production profile, how to use externalized configuration, how to inject secrets with environment variables, how to add production monitoring with Actuator, how to run the app as a managed service. Simple definition: run a Spring Boot executable jar in production. The process of starting a self-contained Spring Boot application with Java-jar while using production configuration, externalized secrets, logging, monitoring, and a managed runtime environment. Final summary: a Spring Boot executable jar is meant to be runnable directly with Java-jar, and Spring Boot explicitly supports that deployment model. A good production setup usually looks like this: Java-XMS 512mem -XMX 1024m -jar opt myapp jar -spring profiles active equals prod -spring config additional location file opt myapp config. And the production environment should usually include externalized configuration environment variables for secrets, logging setup, Actuator for health and metrics, a service manager like systemd, or a container platform. Spring Boot's own documentation strongly supports this model through executable jars, externalized configuration, and production-ready Actuator features.